start?
I mean, it's
start.
a both and. So.
I'll start there, and she can kind of jump in because she's come along with me on all of it.
Yeah.
We went to a football game, a high school football game in the same town where our college was.
He was very shocked because we had to cross the highway and so I reached over and grabbed his arm. And he thought I was being very aggressive.
And I think she held my hand too, and that really impressed me. 59, was it?
1958.
1958.
I've never really stopped and calculated.
I don't think I've counted them either. You just get into it and do it. It's got to be over 40, but I don't know exactly. I'm Carlson Becker, and I was raised in Huntington, Indiana. My father was a minister in Canada when I was born. They moved me to Indiana when I was about a year old, and so I grew up in Indiana, and my father was president of the college, and so he wasn't pastoring a church anymore. So I wasn't really a pastor's kid, but I was a president's kid as I was growing up. And that had a few challenges, but it also gave me a lot of advantages because I saw some things from a different perspective. And I respected pastors. We lived within a block of the church. So if the doors were open, we were there. And I was involved in church. My mother and father both loved the Lord and took us to church regularly, and we were involved in every activity at church. And that was a real blessing as I grew up. And I look back in my life, that gave me a solid background that I appreciate. And we tried to give that to our own kids then as well. In ministry, I started off pastoring a small undenominational church of about 200 people in Huntington County near the college while I was still a seminary senior, and then stayed on and pastored for another 3 years while my wife finished college, because we got married her first year in college, right after her first year in college. So she had 3 more years to go to get a degree. And I had gotten some background in camping through the YMCA. While I was in college and seminary, I worked in the YMCA in Huntington, Indiana. Because of that, an opportunity became available to direct camps for the United Brethren Church in Michigan Conference, which is where I really wanted to go.
Year round.
Year round. And so we became a camp director. I was there for 10 years. At the end of that 10-year time, I became very well acquainted with one of the men on the boards of the denomination. And he suggested I ought to run for a job with the denomination as a stewardship director. Well, I fought it or looked at it or wrestled with it for almost a year, and finally decided, okay, I will go and put my name in the hopper and see if I'm elected. I was elected and served for 12 years as the stewardship director of the United Brethren Church. And during that time, I became very close with the bishop of the overseas department of the church. And I really got a feeling for missions and a desire to be involved in missions. And so I stayed on for 4 more years while that bishop was still in the overseas position that he was in, and was the associate director of missions for 4 years. We agreed, after a long decision, to go back to pastoring in Michigan. I was really looking for a small church, or a church that was dying that maybe I could help breathe some life into. So we came to Traverse City, into a church that was very small at that time.
our first Sunday, our first Sunday, there were 9 people, but we doubled in size the next week. There were 18 of us.
It was a good challenge and a good experience. Finally retired from that pastorate and then went to China to be missionaries, taught English in an English language program, which was designed to help build churches in Macau, China, which has just come back to China after being a Portuguese colony. She was trained to be an elementary teacher. In college, I was trained to be a secondary education teacher to teach English. And so we had a lot of fun, did a lot of laughing, a lot of enjoyable conversation with these people as they were learning to improve their English skills. So we were there for 5 months, left, came back, and then the church that I had pastored before needed a pastor again for a short time. So I went in and pastored for another year and a half. And then the church called us to go back to China for 3 years and asked if we'd help mentor a young Chinese pastor who was just starting out in the church that we had taught English in when we were there for the 5 months. And so after some prayer and soul searching, trying to decide if we could raise the money to do this, we decided we would say yes. And got busy, started to raise money, writing letters to friends and family and so on.
We had our doubts. I had my doubts because our money wasn't coming in at first. And so I said, no, we can't go. And then our daughter, Michelle, said, Mom, where is your faith? And so she really, put us on the spot. And then after the first year, then we had the opportunity of writing our supporters and saying, please do not send any more money. We have all we need for the next 2 years. After we finally said, yes, we'll trust you, then he provided. After the first year, he provided for the next 2 years.
And enough money to come home and everything. It was just wonderful to see how God worked in that. And the Chinese people became very dear to us. We had a lot of really close friends who were very good people. Had a chance to see several accept Christ and be baptized. Baptized one in a wading pool that we put in the back of the church. And it was hard to get her under the water because the water wasn't that deep. But she wanted to be baptized, and we were going to baptize her. When we were there, every service was in English and Chinese. So I was interpreted every time I preached. I had to write out my sermons in word for word, double space, so they could write Chinese characters underneath them so they could be sure they could translate it. And there were times we had to sit down and talk between us to make sure they were getting the right understanding of the terms that I was using in English. And that was really kind of a challenge, but it was fun to do and enriching to him and to me. And so it was fun. Good experiences. God has given us some really great chances to serve in a number of different ways. And he's just been so good to us.
He told me when we were dating and almost engaged, he says that he was going into the ministry, and I smiled. And I thought, I'll change his mind. But not so.
No, didn't change my mind. Not really. I thought I would be a pastor all the time. And it turns out I did not do that all the time. So I really was a little naive about what was going to happen. I
think after we had been in Macau for a while, and then we had an opportunity to travel. We had really enjoyed the travel. We couldn't afford to travel from America to the different places, but when we were in China or Macau, it was so much less expensive to travel. And so we got to go to many lovely, different places. But it's all been an exciting trip, really.
Seeing the different countries and visiting a missionary in India and seeing some things like this and having friends from here come over and we got a chance to do some things there, go to mainland China and visit around. And it was just a great experience to travel together and see some things we had always wanted to see but never dreamed we'd get a chance to do. Well, one of the things that pops in my mind immediately is something our son said to us once. We were playing a game called the Ungame, and the question was this, how your parents show they love you. And he answered with, well, we have devotions. We shut off the TV and everything else that's going on. We have devotions together.
Every night.
And I said, come on, tell me the truth. This isn't really what you think. Yeah, it is. That's how you show you love us. And it kind of blew my mind. I'm kind of finding it in this stage of my life where I've had a lot of physical problems, seeing a lot of doctors and so on, trying to find opportunities to witness through my illnesses. And that's been kind of fun lately. Mm-hmm. God has given me opportunities to share my faith with other people. And even
in the last 2 weeks,
even in my old age and my decrepit condition at times, I'm able to share Christ's love with people. And that's been fun. I thought maybe it was all over, but it's not all over till we're all done.